I'm Eden Brent, Mississippi Blues lady, and you are with Talking Blues.
A blues lady. I think of you as a piano player. Do you think of yourself as a piano player? I know you play guitar as well.
I play guitar slightly. Yeah, I do think of myself as a piano player and a song interpreter.
I read somewhere that you chase eclipse. That
Yes,
you're a amateur astronomer. Did you recently catch the recent eclipse?
yes, I did. Yeah, we drove. We were going to go to Kerrville, Texas, because the weather prospects were supposed to be divine, and the closer it came to eclipse day, say like a week out or so, the weather prospects got poorer and poorer. And so we decided to head east, and and the farther we went, the more the storm was pushing east. So we wound
Ooh.
up changing our itinerary from Kerrville, Texas, to we wound up in Newport, Vermont, which was a wonderful place. We first landed in New York. I'm trying to think of the Plattsburgh, New York, which was a great place too. But the the forecast of clouds was increasing, and so we went just a little bit farther northeast to uh, to Newport, and it was wonderful. If I videotaped it, and when you listen to the video, it's I mean, it sounds like I'm in a panic when really I'm just very excited.
I presume this wasn't your first one.
No, the first one I saw was in 1991 in Costa Rica. And then it was a long time before I saw it was not until 2017 that I saw another total solar eclipse. I mean, of course, I've seen total lunar eclipses, which also excite me, but they cover a larger area when they happen. The solar eclipse is so extraordinary because often when they happen, it's occurring over water, and so nobody sees it. The whales.
Speaking of moons, I have to tell you, I love your song "Goodnight Moon."
Oh, nice. Thank you. That's a Will Kimbrough tune. That's a is a wonderful. Will Owen also co-wrote that. That's a beautiful song. That it's funny. Often on the recordings I've made, which have been kind of few, but there'll be something that I record unplanned. Like on Mississippi Number One, we were just about to leave. We were about to break. The studio session was finished, and I said, "Hey, let's just try this one real quick." And Mississippi Flatland Blues came from that. I think it's a great performance. The band sometimes you put on a better show when you know that it is not necessary. you know when it doesn't seem like the red light is glowing at you. So I did that, and Goodnight Moon was the same thing. I said, "Hey, let's just." Well, I think I was just knocking around playing the piano, and Colin Linden, who produced that record, said, "Hey, you want to try that one? You want to try to record that?" So we did, and I mean, I had never planned to put it on the album, but a lot of people have responded to it, and I mean, I think even some other people have picked up the song to play themselves. I first learned the song from my sister.
Wow, I mean, it's a stunning song.
Yes.
I want to ask you about how you got into music. I get the feeling your family is musical, but tell me how you first got into playing the piano.
Well, I have an older brother and an older sister, and they both took piano lessons, and we had a piano in the house. My grandmother played piano. So I wanted to play. I mean, from before I can really remember, I wanted to play. And my parents, I was kind of pecking out my brother's piano recital piece at, I don't know, 4 probably. And my parents wanted to put me in piano lessons, and the teacher said, "Oh, she's too young. I don't take them till they're 9." And my parents said, "Well, if you don't take her, we're going to find somebody who will." So she took me at 5, and I honestly I hated piano lessons until I met Boogaloo. I mean, I suffered through piano lessons because I love to play, but I still hate to practice unless I can somehow make it fun, which happens when you're learning something you want to know. But a good bit of learning to play any instrument is technical, just getting your digits to do the right thing. So it's kind of exercise. I've never really liked exercise that much.
And you said you didn't like practicing until you met Boogaloo.
Right.
At what age did you meet Boogaloo Ames?
Well, I met him probably when I was 16 or so, 15 maybe, because he played around town and he'd played a lot of social events, parties, wedding. He played my sister's wedding reception. So, I had seen him play a lot, but it wasn't till I didn't ask him to teach me until I was a little bit older and able to get in clubs. And because back then, see, you could get into a club at 18. Not that that would have kept us from doing it, I guess, but but the where the grown-ups hung out, you couldn't really get in until you were 18. So by the time I was 18, I was able to go hear him more and more often, and I was kind of like a groupie, and I'd ask him for requests and then sort of watch what he did and listen. And finally I said, "Hey, would you be willing to teach me?" So that's how it started. He just was teaching me lessons here and there, not weekly or anything, just kind of, I don't know, when I was home from college or just whenever I called him up, we'd get together.
I know you went to school for music, but at what point did you decide that you wanted to maybe pursue music as a career?
Probably when I was 9. Probably when I was real small. I think I always wanted to be a musician. I didn't, I think I don't think I knew exactly what kind of music I was going to play. I studied jazz for 3 years at the University of North Texas, which has a wonderful, very world renowned jazz school. But because I didn't at the time, I went into college, I was 17 years old. And at the time, I didn't really have a lot of background in jazz. And there were no jazz radio stations around. There might be a station that played a jazz show, but anyway, I love jazz, but it was a lot for someone who was just starting out in jazz to tackle. And blues seemed like a natural segue because blues and jazz overlap so much, especially the early jazz. Jazz, say like 20s, 30s, 40s, all of that is sort of bluesy to me. Swing music has, Count Basie was played the blues. uh, so, and being in Mississippi, see, I heard a lot of the Mississippi blues players at the festivals here, and Eugene Powell, who's known as Sonny Boy Nelson, he lived here in Greenville, and I was around him sometimes at parties, or Son Thomas would play parties. There was kind of noted, and T. Model Ford was a friend of mine. It just was natural for me to, it was a sound that I was acclimated to already, whereas jazz, I had a lot to learn, but I still love listening to jazz. I just never really got that functional in it. I always felt deficient as a player in jazz.
But for you to actually get into North Texas, I presume you were quite talented.
I had to audition.
Yeah.
And I didn't really know, at the time, I didn't really know anything about what they would be teaching me. I'd never been to jazz or music school before. So my audition piece, if you're familiar with the rock group Yes, my audition piece was Rick Wakeman's The Six Wives of Henry VIII. I seriously doubt they've heard that before or since. But on that, they let me in.
Wow. So you must have been good for them to let you in. When you went there, did you have an idea of what you hoped to get out of that experience of going to university?
I thought that I was going to study composition, but I was so young and naive, I didn't realize that studying composition required you to write the music down on staff. You know, songwriters, like, say, the songwriters in Nashville, for instance, they have a whole different notation system that is known as the Nashville system. And, they don't notate things on a music staff like I grew up reading. And even though I grew up reading music, I didn't realize that in order to be a composer, that I would need to learn how to do that. Now, I wound up finishing, I got a degree in music from North Texas in music theory, which is similar to composition, but it's less writing because I was just learning how to do that. You know, I mean, I've been reading music my whole life, but I've never been that great at it. I don't know if it's a visual thing with me or what, but I'm not a very good sight reader. I can read music, but I don't like to sight read like church musicians can sight read and transpose just right on the spot. And I never really got good at that. My husband, Bob Dowell, who produced this new album, he's great at that. He can transpose on the spot, read music. I mean, you just put a piece of music in front of him and he can sight read. I've just never been good at that, despite all the years I spent trying to do it. I don't know why I wasn't good at it. And that's another reason why it was difficult for me to pursue jazz, because a lot of you got to transcribe solos, and that was a skill that I was not very quick at. So it's just the music that I finally landed on, it seemed a good fit.
How much blues or other kind of music were you playing outside of school?
Not very much really when I first started. The first job I ever had, Boogaloo had been teaching me. I was home for the summer from college, and Boogaloo left town to go take a job in the Mississippi state capital, Jackson, Mississippi. He moved down there for part of the summer, and so I took his happy hour gig at the lounge where I used to go hear him play. They paid me half what they paid him. I don't know if I was even worth half, but they did pay me. So that was my first job. That would, paying job. I did community festivals and things I did for free, but that was in about night. I was probably 20 at that time, so I didn't. A lot of players are out playing as youngsters, but I never did do that. I mean, I did, like I said, fundraisers or stuff, but not paid gigs till I was 20.
What about the singing? When did you start singing?
Well, I always sang when I was playing. When I was young, I listened to people like Joni Mitchell and James Taylor, and I'd buy these songbooks and then read my band teacher. I did flute in band, and my band teacher Craig Pendergrast, I owe him really a great debt, because he's the one who showed me that I don't have to read all those notes on the staff. If I'm not really good at that, I can read the guitar chords and just play the song and sing it. And I don't really have to play what's on the page. He's the one that really introduced me to that idea and to the very beginning of jazz improvisation. I was in the jazz band in my high school too. So, I used to sing along with my own accompaniment, playing, like I said, James Taylor, Joni Mitchell, or that's the Yes, Six Wives of Henry VIII. I had a songbook of Yes, and that was the live version is the one I played for my audition at North Texas.
So tell me a little bit about Boogaloo Ames.
Boogaloo.
For people who don't know much about him, and what a great piano player he was, but tell me who he was to you and what he represented.
All right, well, Boogaloo was a band leader in Detroit in the 1940s, and knew a lot of the noted people of the day, like Nat Cole was a buddy of his, and Errol Garner, the two great piano players. Um, and then, so he was in Detroit and then traveling some too. And then when Berry Gordy was putting together Motown, I don't know if people realize this, but they had sessions there all the time, rehearsals, and sessions all the time. So Boogaloo was one of the piano players that they were using in Detroit, early on. So Berry Gordy was a friend. Um, Anyhow, my good fortune was that Boogaloo fell in love with a woman whose mother was here in Mississippi, and so Boogaloo came back south to Mississippi, followed this woman he was in love with, who wasn't his wife. and stayed with her for the rest of his life here in Mississippi. And so that's how I wound up meeting him. If he'd been in Detroit, I never would have met him. So he and I worked together. He was teaching me how to play, and then because I would go hang out with him when he was playing and maybe sing a song with him or something. Then people started hiring us to play parties together, and so we played parties and did some stuff. Oh yeah, we got a Mississippi Arts Commission folk arts apprenticeship grant, and that kind of introduced us to the Mississippi Arts Commission and the stuff that they did, and they have this program where they have an artist roster that supports Mississippi artists by offering a part of their fee. It's a matching fund type grant, so they offer support for Mississippi artists to play festivals and things around Mississippi, community festivals and blues festivals or whatever, or at schools, things like that. And Boogaloo and I got on that roster together too, and that helped us get a tour around the state some, and we kind of toured around sort of regionally. We didn't go too far, maybe Shreveport and Louisiana and Memphis, Tennessee, and down to New Orleans and things like that. But we didn't travel. Well, we did play for the state of Mississippi up in New York one time. We did do some fun stuff. We played at the Kennedy Center at a thing they call the Millennium Stage. So we did some cool things together. And so he was my mentor, and I was doing my best to sort of preserve his piano style. And while I'm not a carbon copy, I don't have the hands that he had. He had really long fingers. He's not a really tall dude, but he had really long fingers for the size guy he was. When we dance, I'm short. I'm just 5 feet tall. But when we dance, we could, with my heels on, we could dance cheek to cheek. So he was not a tall fella, but for the size gentleman he had really long fingers. And so there's certain things that he can do, beautiful things in his left hand, walking tenths. Any piano player listening to this will know what I'm talking about when I say walking tenths. Well, I can't do that with one hand. I have to cheat and use my two hands. So I can't play exactly like him, but I must have gathered enough of his sound for people to recognize it, because I was playing on the radio in Memphis recently, and a fella that used to live in Greenville called me and said, "Hey, I just heard you, and you sound like Boogaloo." So I guess, Boogaloo used to joke around. He called me Little Boogaloo, and he used to joke around and say, I put on a tape the other night, and I thought it was me, but it was her. It was Edie, Little Boogaloo. So I think he was proud of what I was doing, trying to preserve his style. And then after he passed away, I had to kind of start doing my own thing, which was not quite what Boogaloo did. He didn't do a lot of singing, but I sing more than he did. But I used to sing with him, so I'm just kind of trying to keep that going, keep his memory alive, and carry on the tradition.
How difficult was it to start on your own and kind of establish your own style at that point when he passed away?
Well, very shortly before his death, this film crew from South Africa came and did a documentary series that aired in South Africa. And one of the episodes was here in Greenville, and they did a big piece on Boogaloo and I, or Boogaloo and me, I should say. And once that aired, I got an invitation to perform in South Africa. And by that time, Boogaloo had passed on, because there was a delay, in taping and the airing of the show. So that kind of opened the door almost immediately for me to do other stuff. I mean, there were times that Boogaloo had other bands and people that he worked with too. So there were times that I played without him, but certainly I've established much more of my own style now that he has passed on, because truly my focus at the time was to, I never put an album out. I never recorded anything. I recorded him. But my real focus was just to kind of promote him. I just thought he was the top, and he was. He still is, as far as I'm concerned. So Yeah, it took some time. Then I got affiliated with the local blues society, and winning the blues challenge in the International Blues Challenge up in Memphis, Tennessee, winning that thing really opened the door. That was a great networking opportunity where I met a lot of people. I met the Mike Powers of Yellow Dog Records there. I met Steve Hecht, who had Piedmont Talent that I was with for a long time. Now Steve has passed away, but I'm still represented by somebody that worked with him, who's in the business, Tina Terry, the Tina Terry Agency. I work with her now. So, I met a lot of people and got a lot of festival opportunities after that. And I'm lucky that I live so close to Memphis, and that because the Blues Foundation is the sort of home of all of these international blues societies all over the world. And so I'm lucky that I'm able to go to their events more often than maybe somebody who lives on the other side of the world would be able to afford to, because it's just right up the road. I mean, as a kid, if we were going to a wedding or something, my grandparents' 50th anniversary or something like that, then, we'd go up to Memphis to do our shopping. That was like really going to town. So Memphis is my kind of like well, I always say there's three large towns in Mississippi: Mobile, Alabama, New Orleans, Louisiana, and of course the capital of Mississippi, Memphis, Tennessee. And it feels like that because we're surrounded by these other places where there's lots of cultural spillover, from Louisiana to Mississippi, and vice versa. And, Tennessee and Mississippi and Alabama and Mississippi being surrounded by these really colorful places, and Arkansas too, being surrounded by these other places that have their own flavor, but we get a nice little taste of it too. I feel lucky to be where I am.
Did the initial the initial success surprise you? I mean, to win the IBCs is a huge deal, and soon after you're winning Blues Music Awards.
Yes. Well, no, not really, because Boogaloo was my teacher. And yeah, I felt like, I was almost kind of winning that stuff for him because he didn't live long enough to win it himself. If I'd have known, I'd have put him up there. He'd have won it like that. you know.
But you had a certain amount of success very early, and it just continued, which is pretty amazing. To win the IBCs is an amazing thing when you think about the number of competitors there are, and to not only do that, but to win a few Blues Music Awards within a matter of a few years after that is even more amazing.
Well, okay. Yeah, I mean, I'm thrilled by it, of course, but I am from Mississippi. I don't know. You know, it's nice to be in the same room with all those folks. I just have a new album coming out now, but I was at the Blues Awards just a month ago, and I wasn't nominated for anything, but I was having a really good time listening to everybody else who was. So it's nice to feel a part of something bigger. I think that's the thing that I love so much. And, the way to do that is to have an award show and stuff. So I was very grateful, of course, to be nominated and to ever win. Nominated or not nominated, or win or lose or draw, I just like hanging out with everybody and being a part of things and staying connected to people, because that's where I can learn from others and stuff.
So tell me about the new album. You mentioned it a little bit.
Yeah.
It's coming out soon. It was recorded in London, which I find interesting because I think in the past you've recorded a bunch of in different locations, and in some ways those locations had some influence on the sound of that album, whether it be in Nashville or Memphis or New Orleans.
Yeah.
I presume that was deliberate. Tell me about recording in London and how that came about. In a way, you might have explained it because of your husband, but what sound did you take away from London, England?
our goal with this one, I've done a lot of, I've not wanted to make the same album over and over again. I didn't want to be in a trap. And so it's nice to work with new people, because new people are going to sound different. And so I might do something different myself if I'm inspired. If I hear somebody else do something fresh, then I might do something fresh too. So, I mean, really, it was almost by accident. We got invited to a party. Some friends of ours, Bob, my husband, who produced the album, he's from London. We got invited to a party, and we've been talking about making an album. And we know people over there, of course, because Bob is from there. And so we thought, well, why shouldn't we just make an album? We're going to this party anyway. We're going to be in London anyway. We could just stay a couple of days extra because we go visit his family too. And why not just call some of your buddies and let's see what happens. And so that's what happened. We got there's a couple of guys that Bob has worked with, and when I've been overseas that I've worked with too. Rob Updegraff on guitar and Pat Levette on drums. And Bob and Rob and Pat have all worked together before in the past. And currently, Rob and Pat work together. So, they kind of have a common language and a common understanding. So it wasn't just a bunch of people walking into a recording space that just absolutely fresh. It was common ground. we were meeting with some history and stuff. So I think that made it go easier. Plus, these guys are just, I mean, Bob is extraordinary, and Rob is extraordinary. Pat is extraordinary. They're just extraordinary players, and they do a lot of session work. And I mean, they played with all kind of famous people.
What is it like working with your husband?
He's so good that sometimes it can be maybe a little bit frustrating. Bob is real, real talented, and and he's got an exceptional ear. So, like for instance, I've always been, if I want to play a song, I'll just listen to it and then I'll take it to the piano and I'll say, okay, here's the way I'm going to play it. And I'm not necessarily listening to it over and over and over and over again and get it right. I just play it the way I want to. Well, that's not the way Bob does it, because when he hears it, he can hear it the right way the first time. And so we'll sometimes butt heads about, how we need to change. Normally, if I follow his lead, it is a good thing. He's got very good taste, and living with somebody and working with somebody can be, I guess, difficult. You take out your frustrations on the people that are closest to you, but we have a great rapport. We love each other a lot. We respect each other a lot, and so it's a great partnership. We did a Christmas album. Bob just moved here in 2015, and then he was kind of getting going, and he made an album in 2017. Then he and I did a Christmas record in 2018, and now we're doing this one. And I'll probably continue to work with him because we enjoy each other, and and my mother always said that two can live as cheaply as one, but only half as long.
So it's been 6 years since the last album. I know that the pandemic must have had something to do with that, but the world has changed in the last 6 years. How has your approach to recording this new album changed because of the time that has gone by?
Well, I didn't realize how much I didn't realize how much I missed the experience. You kind of, I think you sort of get accustomed to whatever. I'm pretty adaptable. I'm a middle child. I'm pretty adaptable. So I think I didn't realize kind of how much I missed being creative and how much doing something creative can spark more creativity. And I thought maybe, I guess I must have attributed my sort of apathy to age or something. But I truly think it was just that I wasn't moving around enough, and so I wasn't getting inspired, and the pandemic was partially responsible for that, absolutely. But now that I'm able to do more things and travel more and have more experiences, then I'm way and with this new album, I'm just way more inspired to learn even more things and to write more things. I'm ready to move on to the next project almost, and this one ain't even out yet. So I think it has breathed new life into my creative side, and so I'm excited about pursuing the sparks that are going off now for me. On a sort of a practical level, I've been surprised at kind of how much people have switched over to digital formats as opposed to buying a physical product. There's an awful lot of people who prefer now a digital issue or streaming platforms versus purchasing a product. But I'm part of that trend too because I've been reading books from my library on my phone. But I find that when I'm doing that, I'm not actually retaining the book in the same way as I do when I'm reading a real book. If I have the real thing in front of me, then it stays with me better. And I think the same might be true about music. I use some of the streaming platforms too when I have to learn a new song or something, and because sometimes you don't have the album right there or whatever. But yeah, I'm not as connected to that song as I am when I sit down with an album and put it on, and just the whole physical process of putting the album on, watching it spin, and reading the liner notes. That to me makes it way more personable and memorable. So I'm really happy that this time, for the first time, we're producing vinyl copies. So I'll have a real phono record. That's exciting.
That is exciting. I mean, I totally agree. For me, it's I grew up and spent all my life going to CD stores or record stores, and the part of the joy was the hunt for the record and all of that, as opposed to just purchasing it. And now that I can just get access to anything immediately, it's not the same. It just doesn't feel the same, and it seems more disposable or less meaningful.
Yes.
Does that,
Yeah.
as an artist, and knowing that the people aren't going out there and spending lots of money on CDs or whatever, and at the same time, more people have access to your music through these streaming platforms. Does that change in any way the way you approach writing music?
I don't think so because you know, I'm just a product of my own experience, and I took for granted that the phono record would always be around, even though it had only been around for what, 100 years or less than 100 years before 8-track tapes came out, and then cassettes and CDs took over, and so I mean, I suppose I should not have been surprised that something else would happen and people would get their product in a different way. But just the whole smartphone experience is changing people's whole frame of mind, I think, and attention span and what people will tolerate. We've produced a couple of videos that are complimentary to this new album, and we just recorded the third one last night. That's going to be the real kicker. We had so much fun doing the video we did. We just had a hell of a good time. Anyway, but I've been surprised to look at there's ways that you can look at how long somebody viewed your video,
Right.
and I've been shocked at how people will stop the video after like 30 seconds. They don't. I mean, I'm not sure that the video enhances the song, but that's kind of what you have to do these days to even let people know that you got something going. So in that way, it's changed. What I do about after I record the album. But yeah, I don't think it's changing the way I approach writing or the kind of music I want to write or perform. I mean, honestly, like I think I mentioned earlier, I've always really wanted to be a performer. It never really making albums was just a way to try to reach new audiences as a live performer. That's really what I enjoy the most is meeting new people and getting out there. And the recording studio is a way different it's a way different experience than that. Boogaloo was really a performer, and so I learned that from him, I guess. And I love making records because it teaches me something about what I'm doing. But as far as as far as being a prolific recording artist, I've never really been that. I'm not sure I will ever be able to be. Just it's so expensive to even get all that together.
But does writing come to you because, I mean, do you write as it comes to you, or do you write because you have a new project coming up?
Well, both. We'll have stuff that we've worked on, and like with this album, for example, we had stuff that were writing just anyway, and then specifically we knew we had an album coming, so we said, well, what other ideas can we come up with? And we really were uh, our focus here was trying. We really wanted to make a blues album. We wanted to. I wanted to get back to the simple sound. I wanted something that sounded like what we could produce for somebody live. I wanted to record an album that we could reproduce in front of a live audience. So, I wanted to use a few people, not a lot of accompaniment. I wanted there to be a lot of space in this record. A lot of the records that I'm hearing now are great, but I think people are getting increasingly used to a higher and higher and higher level of production where sometimes the song gets kind of lost. Sometimes it's way more production than it is the song or the emotion. And that can be, I mean, there's an art there too, but I really wanted to focus on just doing some good songs and a live kind of a thing. That's what we wanted to do. So I doubt that I'll ever get too far away from that because you know the music that I enjoy is about honesty and but sometimes I'm inspired. There's some recent legislation that has me inspired to write some stuff. I've been working on a song about women's rights, and so that that might be on the next one. Yeah.
I wonder, you said when you record, you learn something about yourself. Is there something that you could share with me about what you might have learned from recording this new album?
I learned about focusing on the melody. We we uh we re-recorded a couple of the songs because we did them pretty quick in in London, and the songs were so new, some of them, that sometimes you don't really realize how something's going to come across until you have it on tape. So I learned about really focusing more on melody and my phrasing. There was one song in particular, Mississippi River Got Me Crying is one of the songs on this new album. And we redid the vocals on that because I was kind of singing, we were playing the song in time and I was sort of singing off the beat, a little behind the beat, and it felt fine, but it didn't sound so good. So that was one that we re-recorded. Sometimes in recording you kind of need to be a little bit more straightforward. Like often a bass player will have to sort of tone it down and not play so melodically on the record. Just play the bass line. And it's fun to play melody and do fancier stuff when you're in front of an audience at a live show and everybody's jumping up and down and it's exciting. But for the record, it doesn't come across the same. And so I learned that that I needed to be a little bit more accurate with my timing. So I learned to phrase that song better by recording. I rewrote one of the songs for the same reason because it was not coming across well. So Gas Pumping Man, I redid the lyrics totally for when we recorded. we were mixing the album in Memphis, and we decided to re-record a couple of those two vocal tracks.
The album is called Getaway Blues, and it's coming out on June 21st. How does one feel when you've recorded it? It's ready to come out, but you have a week or two to just sit back and wait for it to come out. Like, what goes through your mind at this point?
Excitement. It's like planning a big party. That's what it feels like. I'm excited. I'm eager to hear what people think. I'm hoping that everybody's going to like it. I think they will. I like it. I hope they like it. So I'm just eager for people to hear it. I'm eager to see. I'm kind of eager to see what do other people like. What's going to be. You mentioned the Goodnight Moon song. I had no idea that that was going to be overwhelmingly the most requested song from that album. I had no idea that it was going to be that song, but it was. So, I'm eager to see what's going to be the most requested song from this album. What are people really responding to? And I'm sure it'll be different for some people, but there's going to be one I think that most people love, and we'll see what that is. So that's exciting.
My final question to you. At this stage in your career, do you have goals? Do you set goals for yourself?
Yes, I do. I want to. Am I to list them?
Well, if you don't mind sharing one or two,
Uh,
but you can just say, yeah, you do.
yeah, I have goals. Yes, I mean, one of the things I really want in my life is a Grammy Award. That's a goal of mine. And I'm telling you, if I have to live to be 112 years old, I'm going to go get me a damn Grammy Award. I, kn- I know it. I shouldn't want it so bad, but I just want one. I just want one. I don't want 100. I just want one. So that's a goal. But I have little bitty goals, too. I want to learn some more. So there's a couple of double time licks that Boogaloo did that were so effortless for him that I still, after all these years, have not tackled completely. I want to do that. I want to finish this song about women's rights. I want to make a new album. I want to launch my new website. I got a lot of goals. I want to have a good time.
Well, good.
Mostly, I want to have a good time.
Eden, thank you so much for doing this. I've enjoyed your music for many years, and it's a real pleasure talking to you.
Marco, this is amazing. Thank you so much for having me on Talkin' Blues.
I appreciate it.